As you just saw, the Washington Wizards beat the Charlotte Hornets without the services of John Wall. He is out the rest of the season. The Wizards announced that during the game. He'll have left heel surgery, expected to miss 6 to 8 months. Wall averaging 21 points, 9 assists a game, just under those numbers actually. Played 32 games this season after playing just 41 games last season. Chris Miles, David Griffin, Brendan Hayward here with you. Griff, if you're the Wizards, and now you're looking forward, you have yourself a situation considering Wall's season has been cut short the last 2 years in a row.
Well, I mean, in the NBA, and Brendan, you know this very well, adversity is a given. It's an absolute lock. You will face it. And the decisions you make and the way you choose to deal with it is optional. And what I think you saw Washington do tonight is rise up in the face of great adversity and let this injury spate that they've had. Several players, you heard them talk about it earlier, John Wall, Markieff Morris, Dwight Howard, Otto Porter, all out. And they still decided that they cared enough to rise up and compete. And that's what you have to do. And there's a very decent likelihood that this injury to John Wall galvanizes this group. And we'll see the best basketball they've played if they can get a healthy Otto Porter and a healthy Markieff Morris. And I think that's what they're counting on right now.
I'm looking at this team, looking at the stats.
Oh, boy.
Color him skeptical is what this means.
No. 35 assists tonight. 35 assists.
Are we getting back to the everybody eats thing? Is that where you're going with this, Brendan?
I didn't say that. somewhere out there, maybe in L.A., maybe Marcin Gortat wants to tweet that tonight. I didn't say that. I see 35 assists. 9 from Ariza, 7 from Green, 3 from Bryant, 5 from Beal. 24 points for Ariza, 13 for Green, 21 for Bryant, 19 for Beal, 20 for Satoransky. You're seeing the ball move around and not just be in one guy's hands. And I'm not saying that this team is better without John Wall. I don't believe that. But I've always believed that John could learn something when he was out from watching how the team moves the ball when he's not there. And I think this team is going to, like you said, is going to use this as a rallying cry, a rallying point that, hey, we can do this. And right now there's no pressure. See, when John's there, there's the pressure of we have to win, we have to win.
And they're not enjoying the process of playing together.
If this team comes back and makes a playoff run in the Eastern Conference, and the bottom of the East can be had, like you can go on you don't have to be a great team to sneak into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. It would not surprise me at all if this Washington Wizards team put it together, especially as they got healthier and they start getting some more bodies. I'm going to be very interested to see how this turns out.
And you said put it together, though. We need a stamp on that. Put it together and
make the playoffs. I'm not expecting anything more than that. I think when you look at the way the season started, the turmoil with injury, if this team makes it to the playoffs, that would be somewhat of a mini success. Now, you still have some questions about the future, and especially if the team makes it to the playoffs after being 10 games under 500, the Wizards really, it's a blessing and a curse because now management is like, okay, so this team is really playing well without John. What do we do? And no one is taking that contract, especially coming off an injury.
Well, it's fascinating because their margin for error is much less now. And with all of these injuries, I said before, I think it could get worse before it gets better. Tonight's a big win. You're not always going to rally quite like that down that many bodies. But Thomas Bryant tonight, you mentioned the 35 assists. I don't know the actual number of screen assists Thomas Bryant had, but Thomas Bryant is playing the role Marcin Gortat played, which was to be an elite screener, to be physical and to be a presence. They're going to be able to get the best of these guys because emotionally now they're in a different place. You said it, there's no pressure. They no longer have to have that feel of, gosh, this doesn't quite feel right. This is heavy. This gives you spiritual rebirth, and in the Eastern Conference, you've got the room for that.
And there are guys that aren't in the starting lineup right now that are getting the opportunity to play. Let's talk about their first-round draft pick, Troy Brown, who spent time in the G League, who hasn't been able to crack significant minutes in the NBA. He gets 18 minutes, scores 9 points, and really contributes. This allows the opportunity for guys like that to get in and play.
Yeah, and frankly, in the previous game, Troy Brown not playing any minutes at all was staggering. The way that they were playing the rotations with Decker and Randall and Baker and not giving Troy Brown an opportunity was shocking in and of itself. But now this really does put an onus on the organization that if they're going to be in this situation, it's all hands on deck. And in a worst case scenario, let's develop Troy and see what we have at the end. And also, to your point about the deal not being movable, the one thing you know for sure, if Otto Porter comes back healthy, he's much closer to earning the money he gets paid currently when he gets to be ball dominant and make plays for other people. So you may find hidden value here because of this injury.
I totally agree. Otto Porter really has a chance to shine when he comes back. We saw last year he was a little bit better when John wasn't there just because he got the ball. He got a chance to do some more things. And the more you touch the ball and the more shot attempts you get, the more confidence you get. And some guys are better when they have that confidence. Some guys, they can just check in the game and chuck up a couple of threes and feel fine. A lot of players aren't like that. They're rhythm guys. Otto needs to get into a rhythm. Without John, it seems like he gets into that.
Were you a rhythm guy, Chris? Were you a chuck it up?
When you in Harlem, what type of basketball player were you? When you on the streets of Harlem, son?
No, let's be real.
Your son.
Okay, I was not very good. I could handle and I could pass. So what I did to make teams, I would become friends with people like you, Brendan.
Okay.
I'm just going to find the big fella, and he's going to score. And then when I would roll around, it's all the big fellas, and I'm the little guy.
Offset, I love his tales of basketball from his days in Harlem. The mean streets of Harlem.
Shout out to Kyle Cuffey. That was my big fella that I used to roll with. You know, he's not quite 7 feet like you, but
I think that
got
means
some
he was
buckets.
a heartless gunner. That's what I heard.
Possibly.
John Wall reportedly needs surgery on his heel. The 5-time All-Star will be out the next 6 to 8 months. Again, he missed 41 games last season. John Wall has been battling this injury, averaging 21 points, 9 assists so far this year. Here is head coach Scott Brooks.
Met with the specialist today in Green Bay, and he is likely to have surgery, and that will be season ending. But as we speak, doctors and multiple specialists, along with our doctors, are conferring, and we'll have more details later. That's the news.
Well, that's confirmation from what we heard earlier. Again, that makes it official that John Wall will miss the rest of the year. So what does that do for the Washington Wizards going forward the rest of this year? 10 games below 500.
Well, I look at it a couple different ways. In the immediate short term, it could get a lot worse before it gets better because there's no Otto Porter. There's no Markieff Morris. They're incredibly shorthanded. What it does do, though, is it puts an onus on Scott Brooks to start to play Troy Brown. Troy had 9 points in his first 11 minutes tonight. He got the opportunity and was ready for that moment. He's a kid who can make some plays for them on both sides of the floor, somebody they invested a first-round pick in because of the makeup of his overall game, and now's a really good opportunity to turn to him and see what he can give you. If you end up choosing to tank, building around the young guys is something you're going to need to do, and you're going to give Troy Brown an opportunity. But I think what this team will do is wait for Otto Porter and Markieff Morris to get healthy and hope that they can resemble the version of themselves that went 15-12 in John's absence last year.
I'm not really sure where they go from that because this team is a little bit different than they were last year. Like you obviously said, you have some guys that are hurt right now. They're going to need them to step up. I'm not sure how the team is going to respond. They did respond well last year, but this is a different ball club. Otto Porter's not healthy. Kelly Oubre is no longer around. We'll see how it pans out, but this looks like it's going to be a very disappointing season for everybody in D.C., the Washington Wizards as a whole, their fan base. I just think this is going to be a disappointing season. They had high hopes coming into the year, and it seems like the Wizards always have high hopes because this backcourt is so talented, but for some reason or another, whether it's poor play, whether it's injuries, whether it's lack of focus, this team just doesn't come together, and I'm not sure where they go from here.
Well, in that graphic that we just had up, you see that they're actually better when John doesn't play on the defensive side of the ball. That's completely counterintuitive when you look at the physical gifts John has. And they've never really put it together as a defensive team. It's never really been their identity. And they had the pieces this year coming into the season that I thought that would be what they became.
Certainly something to monitor for the Washington Wizards is how they go forward and who gets more playing time. Right now, they're ahead of the Charlotte Hornets at the break. Bradley Beal has been leading the scoring charge, 26 points per game in the month of December. Wizards ahead by 6. Washington Post joins us now. Candace, first piece of clarification we need there, the word if is still surrounding John Wall, whether or not he'll elect to have surgery that will end his season. What's the timetable on making that decision?
It seems like it'll be a couple of days, but he's on the path to he's on the path to surgery. He actually is back in the building today, and he's walking around with a bulky walking boot, and that's a telltale sign that he has to stabilize the left heel. And as Scott Brooks said at his pregame availability, he kept saying it is likely to happen. So it's the end of the 2018-2019 season for John Wall, it appears to be.
Candace, there were stretches last year where this Wizards team, in John's absence, played some of their best ball of the season, but that requires that Otto Porter be healthy as well. Where is he in his return to play, and what does it look like for that Wizards team if John does miss extended time?
There's a lot of pain surrounding this season, and Otto Porter's about to miss his 10th game of the season. He hasn't had a stretch this long of missed games since his rookie season. He's dealing with a muscle strain in his quadriceps, and although it seems like he's cleared to play, the Wizards want to have a practice with him before throwing him back out on the court because it has been so long. But yeah, there were some things that worked last year, especially early on with Thomas Satoransky at the point, because more guys had to step up. By the end of that 8 weeks, because remember John Wall missed 8 weeks with the left knee debridement last season. By the end of that 8 weeks, they were slowing down. Thomas was slowing down, and they did need Wall to come back. But I would imagine the Wizards have danced this dance before. They know how to fill in without him. But right now, Otto's out. Markieff Morris could be out for a little while with an upper back neck issue that he's been dealing with. And, of course, Dwight Howard, who they brought in this summer expecting him to be this great option for them at the 5. He's still recovering from his spinal surgery. So who knows when the Wizards will look whole.
Guys looking like the walking wounded out there right now, but we have seen this Wizards team be in this situation before, and we've also seen them bounce back. What will this say about the Wizards and how they mix and mesh with John Wall moving forward if this team does make a run and go to the playoffs without John Wall being a part of the roster?
Ooh, look at you looking forward. They are 10 games below the 500 mark, and although they do play in the East, I totally get that. To be where they're at right now, they have dug themselves in quite a hole. I don't envision, a great rally, let's win one for the Gopher or Gipper, whatever that cliche is, type of movement happening. They're just the hole is very big. The hole is very deep. So if they do make that push, as you say, that would be very interesting. But they are locked to John Wall, and John Wall is locked to them. Especially considering next year when that Supermax contract comes back. So no matter what happens this year, playoffs or not, John Wall will be back, and he'll be here for the long term into his 30s. So something will have to be figured out between now and then.
Well, Brad's been carrying a load in December, playing almost 40 minutes a night, averaging 26, 6, and 6. Has there been any discussion as far as Scott Brooks saying, like, we have to lighten the load on Brad before we have an issue with him?
Yeah, that has to happen. And Scott Brooks is a big believer that it's not just the game minutes. He believes that, shortening their time in practices and shoot around and things that we don't get a chance to see, that will help him along. But still, Brad had to do a lot last year in the absence of John Wall. Although they had Thomas Satoransky filling in at the point guard, Brad had to play make. He had to, create for himself. And we saw a little bit of a preview of that last night in the fourth quarter. It was basically the Bulls versus Brad Beal, and he couldn't beat the Bulls by himself. And moving forward, he's going to need some help, and he will be playing a lot of minutes. I totally see that happening, but there's got to be somewhere or somebody on this roster to kind of be his Robin.
Candace Buckner, appreciate your time. Thank you for your insight from the Washington Post. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, Griff, let's start with you, because if you're a GM like Ernie Grunfeld, there's a lot that you have to handle with this team and trying to figure out where you're going. So let's start with John Wall. Next year, that Supermax kicks in. 4 years, $170 million. This will be the second season in which his year comes to an end early. How much of his albatross is that on this roster now? seeing what John has been through the last 2 years?
Well, it's worse of an albatross if you don't have him take care of it now and if you don't get in front of it. The timeline that you've seen sort of rumored out there of 6 to 8 months of return to play would indicate that the injury is actually a spur on the Achilles insertion of his heel. And that's a significant issue. And in order to repair that and have him come back properly, you need to give him as much time as possible. So I think doing this now and getting in front of it is a big part of protecting the asset value you have in the contract. But even if he's healthy, if the team's not playing well and they're 10 games below 500, it's not a contract you feel good about. But they absolutely have to protect the asset value they have now and let him take as long as it takes to get right.
Brendan, last year without John Wall, this team was 20-21. So there should be some sort of optimism right now. Candace didn't seem like she had that for the team. Is it just because of where they're at now? And if John is out for the rest of the season, it's not like he's coming back.
I think it's because the situation is different. Last year, a lot of those other guys we talked about were healthy. Otto Porter was healthy. Kelly Oubre was a part of that team. And so when you see where this team is now, with Austin Rivers being shipped out, Kelly Oubre being traded, injuries to Dwight Howard and many others on this roster, it's hard to say whether they're going to be able to make a move because, yeah, they made that move last year, and Satoransky was able to do some things as far as kicking the ball ahead to guys like Otto and Bill and letting them eat. Instead of dominating the way John Wall plays. But this year, I'm not sure if they have the depth to do that or make that run. But it will be telling how this team bounces back and how they respond. Because if they do make this type of run, there's going to be a lot of whispers and a lot of people saying, hey, what should we do about that contract? And the fact of the matter is, everybody in D.C., you're stuck with it.
Well, in a weird sort of way, that would actually make it worse for Ernie and for Tommy Shepard. If they go on a great run in the absence of John Wall, now that number really does look like an albatross. And what I think is fascinating is for stretches last year, and we talked to Candace about it, this team looked as good as they looked all year. And Otto Porter, while he was healthy, was also much more ball dominant. They went to him, they asked him to make plays for other people, and he responded. So the number he's on sort of requires that he be asked to carry more of a load. So you can make Otto look more valuable and more worthy of the number he makes and still be in jeopardy of making John's number look even worse than it does currently.
Certainly, I think when the trade deadline comes around, you and I will be sitting here having a discussion if whether or not the Wizards will be buyers or sellers. Can't wait.
Buyers? What are they going to buy? They got a whole team full of bad